Ladies and gentlemen, we have a very, very, very special guest joining us today. Natalie, I am going to butcher your last name, so feel free to sit there and correct me
Schibell.
whenever I do say. Um,
Schibell.
Thank you so much. So I'm just going to say Natalie. So we often talk about the military to civilian transition, but we rarely acknowledge that the decision to serve and then to step away are two of the most consequential moments in our lives. Navigating those moments require a map, a strategy, and unwavering support. Natalie is the distinguished naval officer who has stood in those very thresholds, serving the key leadership and talent acquisition positions, developing hundreds of professionals, and achieving the highest officer candidate school search rate in over a decade. Her career in the civilian sector has been as impactful, leading marketing strategy and product teams for major healthcare technologies, and as well as overseeing a successful DoD SkillBridge program of her own. She is the founder and president of Mission to Commission, a nonprofit organization dedicated to providing a structure, strategy, and support for those entering and exiting military life. Her organization offers career playbooks, personalization, spousal support, and partnership that are actively working to retain military content talent. Ladies and gentlemen, let's give Natalie a round of applause for joining us today. Thank you very much for your time. And Natalie, I always like to start things out first. Let's pretend that you are a Marvel superhero. Tell us your origin story. Tell us about you prior to putting on the uniform for the United States Navy.
Sure. Born and raised in a little town called West Long Branch, New Jersey, which is in Monmouth County. For any New Jerseyans out of there, exit 105 right by the beach. Please don't associate us with that terrible TV show, Jersey Shore. But grew up there around the water, all things nautical, and hit high school, and a history teacher introduced me to naval service. He was a Naval Academy scout at the time, or Blue and Gold officer, and that was really the first time I thought about military service. As it turned out, my Naval Academy pursuits did not work out, but ended up going to a wonderful school, George Washington University, and did the NROTC program there as a college programmer. But I started in my second year of college, so I had to hurry up and take care of all those initial classes that I missed for freshman year. And when I got to my senior year, I was still confused, and because I was a college programmer, I had the free will to disenroll from the program, actually. So even though I did all that work for as a volunteer, I ultimately decided it wasn't quite the right path for me. I was screened for EOD, passed everything, and got to the point where I got to go on all these interviews and really find out more about the role. And it didn't quite align with my major, which was exercise phys, and was interested in health services in the medical field at the time. And so I left college after I graduated, kind of lost. I didn't know what the heck I was going to do. And I'll spare you all the things that happened between then and a whole 6 years later, where I came across the Health Services Collegiate Program that the Navy had. I had no idea, even as an ROTC midshipman, being immersed into the Navy, no one had ever sat me down and said, "Hey, do you know we actually have something called the Medical Service Corps?" And so I jumped at the opportunity to do that. The process took about a year and a half, and off I went to my first tour, Naval Branch Health Clinic Groton, which I actually loved. I know some of you might be Navy out there and saying, Groton, but for an environmental health officer, it was a wonderful place to learn about infectious disease, about environmental health and toxicology. I was the only environmental health officer for a base that basically supported 55 tenant commands and 30,000 people, including contractors using all the base facilities, and got my feet wet in everything: preventive medicine, occupational health and safety, industrial hygiene. Did 3 years there. I loved it, but didn't quite still feel like it was the right fit. Like you all, I transitioned out and found myself a bit lost again, and felt myself a little bit, sad that I had left the military behind. Not so much for, the red tape that we all go through, but that sense of community and purpose. And kind of stumbled about a little bit, and eventually ended up getting my first. Actually, I didn't. I got to back up a little bit. I struggled for about 10 months. 10 months. My first time transitioning out to get a civilian job. Lots of applications. Nothing was working out. So what I essentially did was I recalled myself back into the military. I learned about something called the CANREC, or Canvasser Recruiter Program, and that allowed reservists, and I was a reservist at the time. I didn't fully leave, to take active duty orders for 2 years to be a part of Navy Talent Acquisition Group Empire State, where I was in charge of a recruiting division. Did really well there, became Recruiter of the Year, Diversity Recruiter of the Year on the officer side. Then took my plunge back into the civilian sector, or as though I thought was still not landing a role. I didn't want to be unemployed again, so I returned to the only thing I knew, back into the Navy. I got these sweet orders to work at Commander Navy Recruiting Command, where I worked at the headquarters and was in charge of their newest region, Region Central. Since then, they don't have, it's just Region East and Region West. But at the time, that was really exciting. I got to oversee all officer recruiting operations for a region. Loved it. Did some great things with assessing a lot of great officers, and then went to transition out again. And here I was, struggling a little bit.
That's fascinating. Absolutely fascinating. I mean, in, out, in, out, that definitely is an interesting story. I come from the Army side, so to hear that is truly fascinating in your endeavors. An environmental health officer at Groton, that's really interesting. My brother-in-law works there at EB, so I could only imagine how busy you were with everything that was going on there. So, because of your story and everything that you have experienced, what would you say is the biggest single misconception for transitioning service members coming out of the military, hitting the civilian world? What is that misconception for them, the transitioning service members, and then for the civilian community that's going to watch this later on?
Yeah, I think a lot of people think, well, you won't have any issue getting a job. You're talented. You've led many people, in my case, hundreds of people. You're going to be fine. Any company is going to be super excited to scoop you up. Not necessarily. And it depends on what your MOS was. It has nothing to do with you personally or your accomplishments, believe me. I wouldn't be sitting here if that were the case. But it's just a question of speaking different languages, Chinese and French. And, both are well-meaning, but one is not translating into the other. They see a wonderful human being who's accomplished many things, but then they get very confused and don't know what to do with you, or they think that you will be bored. I sat on one interview with a consulting firm, and they said, won't you be bored here? And I scratched my head. I didn't know so much how to understand or how to respond to that, and said, I don't seek chaos. I seek purpose. And so you have to, be very savvy when you answer some of these questions and deal with some of the misconceptions about, being a veteran.
Love it. I love it 1000%. And this is something that I struggle with. I've been out for 10 years, and up until very recently, I would literally use some military jargon and stuff like that on my resume and speaking with it. And only up until I'd say the past year, I've not been doing that. What is your sort of your routine in effectively translating that military jargon, that information to clear, impactful civilian language for interviews, resumes, everything like that?
Yeah, you have to start off with each person individually. They each have their own story. They each have their own specific roles that they did in the military. And if you're Navy versus Army, we have something called collateral duties. So in addition to our regular job, we have all these other assigned jobs. For me, it was command fitness leader, controlled substance inventory board officer. I was a breathalyzer officer. I was all these different things. So you have to take those individuals specific, not so much the titles of their roles, because right, that's not going to translate, but the responsibilities and the quantifiable metrics. So everyone has a job to do. There's a workflow, and you have to translate those specific two things into what the civilian uh, sector calls it. And that's different things. When I was an environmental health officer, no one would ever know that that translates into public health analyst. So, you work more on the government level. So that was the CDC natural, synergistic transition. But for a lot of us, it doesn't so much work that way. And for me, it was more of an easier transition into government service, but not into marketing, right? I had also a big portion of my career was product marketing. There's no way in heck that comes from environmental health. However, if you peel back the layers a little bit, you see, oh, environmental health research. You're looking up protocols. You are citing certain things, and in the product world, that's the features, the differentiators, the workflows, and the value propositions. Public health is the same thing. You have your protocols, you have your things you're trying to prevent or fix. In epidemiology and disease you're trying to prevent. And it's all that research that goes into it. And there certainly is a ton of research in marketing, specifically product, where you're looking at an industry and a sector. You're taking out personas and audiences and segmenting them. That's what really an analyst, an environmental health officer does. They're analyzing all these different diseases and programs and figuring out how to prevent outbreaks and all these problems. So it seems like a stretch on a when you step back, but when you take a closer look, take the magnifying glass out, you're like, oh, I see, I get it. So that's what I do.
That's really interesting. And I just thought of something, with you talking about all of that. Um, if there was, one sort of change to the TAP program that the military has to offer based on your professional experience, what would it be and why?
Yeah, it's too mass produced. Now, no disrespect to the TAP program. They do the best they possibly can, but it's just not good enough. It's very short. Transition doesn't happen overnight. It's a journey. The MOS crosswalk, it seems promising, but it has many, many flaws. Your MOS doesn't directly translate to any job, especially in this modern era where we see, people wearing many hats and using different platforms and technologies per sector. And things are now very specific, like all the different types of marketing. You have corporate marketing and product marketing, people that run events. There's just so many different types, and it's not as cut and dry like that, and it's sort of mass produced. Plug in your MOS, ta-da, here's what you need to apply for. No way. Not the case. So it should be more personalized, which is what I do. You sit down, you analyze the resume, you take the person's desires into account as well. You may have had a certain job. You might want to still kind of go into that area, or you might want to completely do a career pivot. And if you're somebody that wants to do a complete 180, you're gonna be a little bit lost. You're gonna be kind of scrambling, and you're kind of looking at all the different jobs out there, but you have no idea where to begin. And so I think that's the biggest fault.
I like it. I really honestly do. And somebody who did 15 years with multiple MOSs, I literally had like 100 jobs pop out. And I was like, this isn't going to work. I mean, it was just absolutely insane. But we have one of my favorite participants raising his hand. Tim, what do you got?
Hey, how's it going? Just the TAPS question with your multiple transitions, just made a weird question pop in. Did you have to go through TAPS each time?
That's a really good question. Yes. So I went through it the first time I left active duty in 2015, and then I had to go through it again as a reservist who went back on active duty. So you go back into the active component, and I had to do it again. So I went through it twice.
Okay, sweet. Yeah, yeah, I'm sorry for that. TAPS is good for your starting to think, I guess, is how I would put it. It gets you your should get your juices flowing to start thinking about different things, and then programs like these and other programs help you dive deeper into it. So I understand it, like it needs to be better, but for the amount of people that go through, I don't know how to fix it. But yeah, sorry. That it was
Yeah.
just a random question.
I got all sorts of ways to fix it. If anyone out there is watching, you start TAP the day you enter. You're assigned a mentor anywhere around the country in a specific field that's comparable to what the person's going into. And you stick with that mentor. You have multiple mentors, perhaps more as you're getting ready to transition, and you never know when you're going to transition, right? You might get hurt and it could be, oh my goodness, now I'm hurt. I thought I was going to be a lifer and now I'm, 3 years in. But you at least sign them that mentor, and you're consistently working on certifications, education, or at the very minimum, you're talking to a mentor, you're planning your career for when you're exiting. And this way, it's not this panic mode when you're 6 months out or a year out, or sometimes people will get out and then they start planning. That can be changed, and it can be changed very easily. We have skill bridge that happens towards the end, but there needs to be a version of skill bridge that happens when you join. It's that's how you fix it.
I really do appreciate that, because that is something that I said to my commandos I was getting out. Absolutely insightful, and I'd love hearing that from someone else out there. The thing that really I find interesting is that Mission to Commission also supports military spouses. So, as someone who, what is that systematic barrier that the spouses run into? And, what would, you imply to the spouses to make changes to their actions or the way how they address things as they are, working through processes themselves?
Yeah, I mean, they're going through the same challenges, and spouses are put into a very unique position. They're not the military service member, but they're absolutely still serving. And we all know whoever has a spouse out there or a significant other, when you go away or when you go to work every morning, they're going to work themselves possibly, or maybe they're staying at home with the children. Maybe they're doing a balance of both. Their careers are affected when we're moving and shifting from place to place. Now they're uprooted again, and maybe that specific company that they work for is gone. It's not in that particular area, or they won't be reassigned, and they have to start from scratch over and over again. And so I see a lot of spouses who have made tremendous career sacrifices, and we all know statistically they have a higher rate of unemployment than the regular civilian population compared to their non veteran associate or military connected status. And that makes me sad. And so, because I've been on both sides of it. And the career services that I offer to veterans, I also extend to their spouses as well.
I love it. I love it. Um, Based on your time doing the recruiting gig when you were in the Navy, which definitely was like looked like the highlights of your career, what were some of the like top skill? Derek, help me out here because I'm probably going to screw this up because I don't speak Navy. What were like some of the MOSs or the job roles that really had the highest surplus and in-demand civilian careers, but are overlooked by the civilian market? Rates. John, thank you. Ratings. Thank you. I apologize. I should know that by now.
Here for you, boss.
Oh, you're asking me?
Yes. Sorry.
The individuals who that the civilian sector was seeking?
Yes.
Hands down, nukes. Nukes don't have a whole lot of trouble when they're transitioning out. They're STEM. Anyone with a strong STEM background, but they're highly sought after at a wide variety of companies. Government as well. For their unique area of expertise. Cyber warfare engineers and individuals who are highly skilled in cybersecurity and credentialed IT individuals as well, who have these top secret clearances, are very well sought after, especially now given the government situation. I get all sorts of different numbers, and I've yet to determine the exact number of what a top secret clearance is worth. I've heard $20,000. I don't know. It really depends on, time is money, right? You have to wait in line if you're a civilian to get that clearance, whereas someone with a top secret clearance, scoots right in. So it's not only job, it's level of clearance. But nukes do pretty well. Engineers, I see the most individuals struggling who are surface warfare officers. If you are a pilot, of course, if you want to fly commercial aircraft, there's still things that you need to do to get certified in all this. And a lot of people don't realize that. If you're an FA-18 Super Hornet pilot, you're not doing that in the civilian sector. So everyone has their struggles, but the apples to apples translation, I would absolutely say the nukes. So, nuke pox coming in, recruiting them, it was pretty easy to bring them in. They were a hot commodity, and they definitely had choices, but that was a pretty sweet deal. I think one of the greatest kept secrets in the Navy, or they try not to make it a secret, is the NUPOC program. And also they have, what was the other one? Engineering duty officer, all these different engineering careers, and they have different academic programs that they can go through, so that their schooling they're getting a salary while they're in school. I came in through a program like that called HSCP, which is the Health Services Collegiate Program, where I got paid a salary, which was BAH included in there as well. My time while I was in school counted towards active duty service, and so that was a big help for a student. These are great programs. HSCP, HPSP are across all branches for those healthcare professions. So those are some great opportunities that you can get in the military.
Love it. Love it. 1000%. You touched on something that is a little bit pulling on my heartstrings. And with everything that's going on with the federal government right now, what are you seeing? What are you experiencing? What has been sort of like you've been hearing through your circles? Because I can tell you right now, those of us here at Seven Eagle, we're hearing a lot of all sorts of confusion and chaos. Go go right ahead with that, please.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of some people are going to work and not getting paid. Some people, are required to stay at home, which is tough, right? It puts you in you can't even continue doing your job, so you're going to fall behind. There's a lot of uncertainty. I can't speak for, the political things that are going on, at least not in a public forum. But I will speak to some of the things that I've been hearing from individuals. There's a lot of concern, and it just depends on. And I say this all the time, not only for people that work for the government, not only for people who are transitioning from the military. You've got to have your savings at least 6 months, at least, that you will get by where you don't have any income coming in, and that's hard to do, I know, but it's got to be done. And we've all in the corporate sector have experienced reduction in force, layoffs. They can happen at any time. You are not invincible, and that's something to always be mindful of. So I always tell people transitioning out, have savings. If you're not sure how, go to certified financial planner. Heck, I get pinged by one, I think, every single day. On LinkedIn, so beware, but have someone in your corner that can help you translate. The military doesn't really teach you how to manage your finances. I wish they did. That should probably go together with that program that I recommended, when you first join. But that is a top priority. So we things are uncertain right now. There's a lot of people who are out of work even before the government shut down. So, I talk to those individuals on a daily basis, and, everyone's story is different, but if you go on LinkedIn, you see a lot more of open to work, green circles around the profile today. So, it's pulls at my heartstrings as well.
It's, being out for 10 years, this is probably one of the most competitive markets, particularly at least in my career field that I've been seeing for sure. The military does not do a very good job teaching you about finances and things like that. So, this is something that I really worked with my soldiers, and I actually brought in a financial planner to work with them. Do you think the military should have someone like that, like a dedicated financial planner to teach these kids coming in as E1s, or even, no disrespect, O1s who, maybe have had a little bit of the cushier life? to teach them that, or do you really think that should fall on their commands?
Well, I'm not sure if it should fall on their commands. You need somebody qualified, and we've all had it in the military. We have our expert in each area teaching.
Yeah.
Even someone who within the military is trying to teach us about transitions. How effective do you think that is? Probably not that. They haven't transitioned themselves, so I'm not sure it should be at a command level. It should be DoD wide. Money's money, whether you're Navy, Air Force, Army, Coast Guard. The programs are the same. So there, in a perfect world, there would be someone who is providing training on that, and also has people come and speak on that. When I was in ROTC, we had drill on Fridays, and we had guest speakers come in and give lectures. And that was really great because we got to hear from all sorts of people and their backgrounds and the different jobs that they did. But what if, the military had, individuals who obviously there might be an incentive for them, because they're getting access to individuals who might, partner with them. But, what would that be like if you actually had exposure to that from day one, starting in boot camp or ODS or whatever you're in, OCS, where you get some really good solid information on how to plan your savings and set aside money. Everybody, as an officer, I've had sailors get into trouble financially, buy cars that they shouldn't, because as some of these different car companies offer incentives for military, so they get all excited and they go out and they burn their entire few paychecks on down payment on a car. Don't do that. You always get a sailor, you always get someone and officers too, that make those poor decisions. There's certain things that can help through Soldiers and Sailors Civil Relief Act, but you want to make sure it doesn't get to that, and that you're spending responsibly.
We all see the jokes, and Tim just put it in the chat, the 30%, Hellcat, yeah, everything like that. It really is a challenge on, being a paratrooper where I was. Yeah, I mean, Fort Benning, it was really hard to get from, Benning to downtown Columbus or even Atlanta. And all these kids would sit there and go out by cars. So it's like, what are you doing? And there is a very funny story that one of my squad leaders told me when he came to my unit, is that the best financial advice he got was from someone who we all know the name, Pat Tillman. And it came down to buying a car. And he was sitting there telling us how Pat would sit there and be mentoring these kids, in Ranger Bat on their money and everything like that. And he literally went with one E1 private to a dealership outside Tacoma and said, this is the best car that you can get for your budget and everything. That kid showed up with a beige Volvo at like 2.5%. Everyone was making fun of him because he had lifted trucks and sports cars, and I remember chatting with Pat about that. And I was just like, that way to go, man. You're truly setting the example. So I do want to talk about, your efforts with mission to commission and everything like that. Your organization focuses on treating military service as a continuum, not a chapter. Go into that a little bit more. I really got enthralled with all that. Just kind of expand on that, if you would, for all of us, please.
Sure. We operate under the belief that the transition starts the day you raise your right hand, already when you're joining, because you want to come in with the right knowledge and tools to succeed. We all typically all of us. I don't know if anyone's different. You walk into a recruiting office, or you're searching online and you say, I want to be that. And depending on whether or not you're an officer, where you go and enlisted, the rules are a little bit different, but 9 times out of 10, you come out being something completely different than what you thought you would do. And, or the job, in my case, was pretty different than what I thought it would be. Not in a bad way, but there were so many things that I learned while I was serving that I didn't know the job entailed. I pretty much knew next to nothing about what an environmental health officer did on a daily basis. And the very first time I was exposed to environmental health officer was during one of my interviews on, they called it a VIP trip, VIP trip. And that's kind of sad, right? You know, you're about to put a blank check on your life and go into a job and you have no idea really what a day in the life is like. That's pretty bad. So, you know, mission to commission is a little bit different. You know, someone can come to me in complete confidence. You know, I'm not their recruiter. I'm not going to sway them any way, right or left, or I'm not going to sway them towards the Navy when there might be a really amazing program in the Air Force. And, you know, they say, I'm confused. I don't know what to do. And, you know, do I go here or there? And I don't tell them exactly what they need to do, but I give them the information so that they can make an informed decision on their own life, especially when it comes to officer programs. Do I go academy? Do I go ROTC? Do I enlist? Maybe enlistment is better for me. You know, maybe I wait. You know, maybe they're me and I join when they're 28 years old. You know, 6 years after when I could have, and you know they're going in now as a professional with a graduate degree. So you know, I also work with individuals who are having some trouble with recruiting and, you know, they're having trouble finding a recruiter. And I help bridge those connections, or they want to run something by me or talk about, you know, what the medical waiver process is like. I give them that transparent information based on my experience. You know, and I keep up to date with many things. And then, you know, there's the other side of it when they're transitioning out, of course. You know, through lots of connections that I have, especially on LinkedIn, I get a lot more people who inquire about transitioning out versus coming in. But that's the same type of information that I give to that individual who wants to join, you know, linking it to what they're going to be doing possibly when they exit the military. So it works both ways. It's a continuum. The same way someone that comes to me when they're first transitioning out, they might come back to me 5 years later and say, well, I had a heck of a time being a marketer. I want to get into something else. You know, can you help me analyze what I've done the past 5 years so I can make a career pivot? Or maybe they want to be an entrepreneur. You know, how do I go about this? So that's how it's a continuum. What I do is not transactional. It's not here's your mentor, which I appreciate, and they can be very helpful with some of these other organizations out there. But you need a mentor all throughout your career. You need advice, you know, at all these turning points. You know, when you all go to your first interview and you land your first role and you're given a contract and, you know, you want to negotiate. How do you negotiate, right? The military doesn't teach you how do I talk about salary? How do I talk about, you know, options that are offered? You know, how do I value my worth and communicate that in a confident way? Well, without, you know, looking greedy or thinking, you know, this person is just interested in, you know, not in the job, but in the salary. So these are all very important things that someone goes through from the point they're joining and the point they're transitioning out. That's what Mission to Commission focuses on. It's a lot. It's an ocean. And we're small enough now where we can handle it. But when we get bigger, we'll have to scale up because people have a lot of questions.
What are some of the common things that you see for people wanting to go in? What do you see a particular rhythm of, like, they want to go into a specific career field or branch, or is it, you know, they saw it on TV, they want to be the Marine Corps officer slaying the dragon with the sword, or, you know, maybe even going to be a, you know, surface warfare officer, and you sit there and say, well, maybe that's not a good idea. Like, do you see a commonality between them all, or is it just, you know, it's all over the place, is it scattered?
Yeah, as an officer recruiter, I saw the most people wanting to be intel officers and supply corps officers for obvious reasons, right? Everybody thinks intel is sexy, and supply corps, of course, they get to deal with all the money, and there's lots of good opportunities, you know, dealing with government contracts, especially reserve. And it's funny, as a recruiter, you're gold with a certain, you know, persona. Usually supply corps, there's a very small goal, but we see that also out here on the nonprofit side, where people come to me and they want, just the other day, someone wanted to be an intelligence officer. and they did not care what branch it was. They were even considering, opportunities in the Coast Guard, Army, and sometimes they're not truthful and they don't tell you they already did a MEPS exam with the Coast Guard and was disqualified. And then they come back to me and say, just like a recruiter, something to confess. I got disqualified with, when I went with the Coast Guard for MEPS. And so you're telling them, okay, now you got to request the record and do all this. So, it's a combination of things, but typically people, they want to do a specific profession and they don't care so much what branch it is. Then there's always the special person that wants to be a SEAL. Everyone thinks they can go be a SEAL, and you have to kind of bring them back to earth and, talk about how competitive it is. And those three jobs are probably the most popular: Intel, Supply Corps, and Navy SEAL. The least amount probably surface warfare officer. A lot of people who want to be pilots. But that's generally what we see.
That's I mean, I'm sorry, you said surface warfare earlier. That's a hard transition. I had to bring that back up, and that it's yeah, you're going to see SEALs, and people don't really understand how in-depth naval intelligence gets. I worked with them, and they are intense, and that is a very hard job as an officer for sure. And SEALs, obviously, we all know about them. But let's say you have somebody who wants to go be a SEAL officer. What is sort of your path of education for them, and sort of like bring it back, or even SEAL enlisted? They want to take that contract and not just sit there and say, hey, by the way, if you wash out of BUDS, you're going to be an unrated sailor. How do you negotiate that? How do you influence them to maybe change that perspective?
Yeah, and that's a really good example with Navy SEAL and why something like mission to commission is so important. We all know the highest population of SEALs comes from Naval Academy, then it comes from ROTC, and then we have OCS, where it's kind of like that sliding ruler of they determine the amount of spots available based on how many are coming out of the academy and ROTC in that given year. So by the time you're trying to compete for OCS, you're already, fighting for those very, very small numbers. And so, and I've successfully put in a few. One was a Princeton track runner, another one was prior enlisted who rang out of BUDS and was trying again. The odds are against you when it gets to that point. Can it be done? Yes, but it's going to be, in all honesty, a lot harder. At the Naval Academy, you have all the tools and resources and mentors available. ROTC, they're there as well, but you're not eating and breathing and sleeping the military on a daily, not as much at least. You're not in an institution surrounded by these resources and possibly facilities and mentors and the ability to go hands-on and to see some of these, to actually go and train. And that's the challenge. And then of course OCS, they're kind of on their own. So a lot of individuals, when they're trying to go for OCS, they get put in a dual path for enlistment. Enlistment process is much faster. OCS, there's the screening process, there's the clearance process and the interview process, and then they have to go to mini BUDS, and it's this whole thing. And if you miss the board, now you're rolled into the next year. And a lot of people give up, and a lot of people want to put their lives on hold, which I tell them, don't. If you want to go to school, go to school. And that's another one of the challenges that I see as well. People put their lives on hold when they're going for these applications. I mean, it happened to me. I didn't hear anything. I already ended up starting my first semester without the scholarship, and I said, I just can't wait anymore. I got to do this. My life can't be on hold anymore. So I finally got picked up for the scholarship, and I was happy, but that it was a process. So, at the end of the day, you have to keep on going forward, keep on improving yourself, keep working towards your degrees. Don't ever put your life on hold for the military, at least before you're joining.
Excellent. And there is a service academy graduate here today with us. And I know that she would sit there and agree with you 1000% on that. Tim, fire away, sir.
Yeah, so that's talking about, going in. You also talked about how the majority of your stuff is also geared towards people as they're getting out. A little bit about me. I'm in the Air Force combat control, so special operations, attaching to Green Berets and Navy SEALs. Very similar. Like I liked to do hard things and I didn't like to breathe. So, I did scuba diving, free fall, all those things that you think of like when you see the movies and stuff, just on the Air Force side. Which all those things are really fun to do, but they don't translate well to the civilian side. It's hard to take some of those aspects and show how you'll be at value added to a company. Uh, so that's something I've been struggling with, and I know it's more of a niche thing and more specialized than some of the people on this call. I know they're like Clay, Green Beret, like knows what I'm talking about. But like, what advice do you have for your problem children like me?
I wouldn't say you're a problem child at all. You just have to know where to look. There's lots of different, career tracks. So what Mission to Commission does, it analyzes your resumes and your skills, and it gives you 5 career tracks. So for you, one of them would be, Fortune 100 defense contractors and mission critical infrastructure tech companies, government agencies for security, leadership and risk. Another one would be federal and government service. Think about the CIA, of course, the FBI, DHS for counterterrorism and field intelligence, State Department diplomatic security service. You can also do private defense and special mission support. Think about training readiness instructor, specialized defense program manager, defense innovation, emerging capabilities programs. Right now, Booz Allen, SAIC, Amentium, Leidos is another one.
Oh gosh.
Palantir. Look at those. There's also leadership in operations and logistics. That's suitable for aviation, healthcare logistics, energy, manufacturing, human performance and training. High performance coach. You see a lot of Navy SEALs going into that. Going and making speeches with different corporations, telling them how to incorporate some of the military strategies for increasing human performance at the highest levels and applying that in the corporate sector. There's a company called Afterburner that I actually interviewed with and was offered a job for that did that. And there's a lot of different independent coaches and speakers that do that as well. You're going to be really good at mission planning, leading a team or a platoon, close quarter training and drills. That stuff all translates into the civilian sector. Some people go into their own private investigation firm. Of course, I always tell people not to go into their own businesses when they immediately get out. Bad idea. Prove me wrong. But there's lots of different things that you can do.
And yeah, Tim, I know that we talked about this, but some of you know what I do and what my career field is I'm a learning and development program manager. And where did I learn those skills? Where did I do that transition? Well, you go to Fort Bragg and you sit there and you go get a Green Beret. And that's how I got into the career field that I do here. John, you are next. And then Ms. Monique, you are next. So John, fire away. My favorite JC1.
Thank you, Clay. And thank you, Natalie, for coming on with us today. I'm a Navy vet like yourself. One thing that you said that really stood out to me and a few others is I don't search for chaos, I search for purpose. So my question to you, Natalie, is in your transition journey or journeys, how did you search for purpose when you were getting out?
So that's a really good question, and it doesn't always happen that way, right? And I'm going to go off on a tangent here because I think it's really important. Because when you get out, you might be very resolute. You know exactly what you want to do. Some of you might be, well, I know exactly what I can do and I want to do. And some of you say, well, which is like me, I know exactly what I can do, but I don't feel like I can transition into it. So it's going to be a little bit messy for most of you when you first get out. But I always tell people, go do what you want to do, what you're passionate about, what you can't, what you feel like you want to run out of bed every morning to go do. That's not always possible, but that's okay. There's ways to get around that. But your choices in the beginning, they're not going to be as realistic. I have to put it out there. You're going to have to get your foot in the door first. You're going to have to get a job that gets that specific title. For me, it was environmental health officer to now an analyst. As soon as I was called the public health analyst, now Forrester Research recognized me and said, "Oh, analyst, you're an analyst." The job couldn't be more different that I did at Forrester Research versus, the CDC. But that made sense for them. So naturally for me, healthcare, we didn't get into my whole background, but when I was getting out the most recent time, it was during a pandemic. So for the first time, and I always joke, it took a pandemic that I could get the job that I needed. I was able to, because of the COVID-19 pandemic, get an amazing job at the CDC as a public health analyst. As soon as I had that, that was my golden ticket. For me, that was very purposeful, right? It was, mitigating COVID-19. At the time, I was put on the Community Interventions and Critical Populations Task Force. I got to deploy with them. It was very rewarding, got to wear a lot of different hats. But in the beginning, there might be a job that you can find purpose with, or it might be a job that you completely hate. We try to avoid that, but sometimes, we've got to do what we got to do. We got to take that job that might not make us super excited, but I guarantee you there's going to be aspects of that job that you can find joy in. And, we're all, from the military, and, I'm sure it doesn't matter what branch you're in, you're going to be put into jobs that you really don't like, but you find the joy in it, right? You might find the joy in the tradition. You might find the joy in your shipmates, or, what does the Army call it? But your comrades.
Battle buddies.
And your battle buddies. It's right. And so there's aspects of it that you enjoy. And I urge you to apply that to any job that you get out in the civilian sector. Find the joy. There's every job, especially now with technology, there's some really cool things happening. And even if you can find the joy in one task, use that to your advantage and figure out how you can, expand on that task and get that job that you ultimately want. For me, it was public health analyst into, healthcare analyst. So I went from, the National Wastewater Surveillance Team and working with contracts as well, because I, of course, wore different hats. It is the government, to, sitting with the media and talking about emerging technologies in healthcare. And if I hadn't done that job, if I didn't understand the workflows of what, individuals do at the CDC and the technology that they use and how teams come together remotely in a international disaster response effort, that gave me, the flavor and the energy to get on a call with the media, or to get on a call with that CEO of a Fortune 100 company, and to give that different perspective. So it's very valuable. Even if you might not love your job, find a way to love a couple of things and then allow that to make you grow into something that you want to be and want to do.
Love it. Love it. Love it. Love it. Monique, go right ahead. What do you got?
Hey, Natalie. I love that you said, it's find joy in every job that you have, even if it's something that's not really aligned. But I wanted to ask you, I was just curious, what your thoughts were about not jumping into business ownership immediately after retirement. Just curious.
Yeah, don't do it. You might think but you really don't know. And take it from me. I've been in your shoes. It takes years to build up a startup, and you're not going to be able to do it when you step out of the military. First of all, you have to deal with all the things that a transition requires, right? And, you got to take care of your VA stuff. Maybe some of you put in a disability claim. Maybe some of you are still in the reserve. Take care of all that. And when you want to start a business, you've got to learn so much, right? The military teaches you a lot of things, and it certainly gives you the capabilities to do anything, but you've got to learn first. You've got to go out into the civilian sector, whatever the field it is, learn the workflows, learn the technology, learn what it takes to be successful, have a mentor or many mentors in that field or across different industries before you go and dip into your coveted savings, your savings that you need for a mortgage, or you maybe need for your children or your children's college education or whatever it is. Please be careful and don't blow your money. Yes, you can get a loan, but then if you're not successful, who's going to pay back that loan? And now you're starting out in not a good place. So what I firmly suggest is, get that job, have a little side hustle, have your little your startup that makes you feel whole, build it up. In the beginning, you'll work with contractors or perhaps you're solo. Build up your tech stack, your technology that you need to do your job, because let's face it, you cannot work in any type of job or business without a tech stack. At a minimum, a CRM, and CRMs can be expensive. Marketing automation tools. You're going to have an accountant. You're going to have an attorney. You're going to have, a SharePoint, and you're going to have Slack and Teams or whatever it is, whatever your preferred methods of communication. You need secure systems. You need to follow the rules. You need to pay your taxes. There's laws that you have to follow too, depending on what you're doing. I'm a nonprofit, so I have to make sure that things are transparent and things are separate. Learn all these things first. Learn what it is, and I don't care what anyone does. Every aspect of owning a business or any type of business out there has a component of marketing. Marketing costs. I was just explaining to someone yesterday, an attorney in his 40s was very surprised by how much fees go towards SEO and marketing. And I said, look, even the SBA, if you don't go by me, go look at the SBA. For a boutique legal law firm, it's between 5 and 7% is what you should be spending on your marketing efforts. And, say you make $2 million, it's about 140,000. And that might surprise someone, but in order to make money, you need to spend money. And then you need to scale appropriately. So it didn't matter. It's a very intelligent individual who's had a practice, very good at what he does, but he knew nothing about marketing. And, that's a business owner, right? And that's all, that would be all of you. You start your own business. You have to take all these things into account. How much do you want to scale? How much do you want to spend? Are you happy with, getting a little bit above the bottom line, or know what the bottom line is? Have a business plan. A lot of people jump in without that business plan, that at least looks at the next 5 to 10 years. Have other people review it before you just start running to the bank, which they'll ask you for a business plan too if you're getting a loan. Before you go all in, have a job, save up, before you go and start spending money on tech stacks and personnel and all the things and the t-shirts. Don't do that yet.
Well, thank you for answering that. Yeah, I figured sometimes it takes a while to get to that break-even point, but I appreciate it. Thank you.
Usually for a small business startup, if you are starting from scratch day one, it is 3 years usually for you to recoup your expenses and for you to start being able to pay yourself. It does not matter if you establish yourself as an S corp or anything like that. It's usually about 3 years. There's a reason why y'all don't see this green beret sitting there starting out a coffee company or clothing brand or anything like that. I like companies. That's because I'm a social butterfly. But anyways, we have 4 minutes left. I want to open it up. Does anybody else have any questions for Natalie before we depart for the end of the day? Olivia, why did I know that you were going to raise your hand? Go right ahead.
Hi, ma'am. Thank you so much for coming to speak to us today. I really resonated with your story of just trying to do a continuum of service versus just a chapter of your life. My question for you, with a little background on me, I'm exiting the military as my husband, who finished school while I was in, is trying to launch his career. So we're trying to flip the breadwinner situation. He's a STEM guy. He does coding, software engineering type work. He's having a hard time in a field that we thought was going to be a bit smooth to jump in on Amazon or Microsoft or somewhere. And he's trying to go the officer route in the Space Force, the Air Force, something like that. My question for you, because I feel like you'd be a great connection for him, is what does a session with your nonprofit kind of look like? What sort of information are you looking for individuals to bring to you while you sit down and have that career breakdown with them?
Yeah, for someone like him, a resume, because
Mhm.
there's something called a program authorization in the Navy, and it's the same across all branches, where you have minimum qualifications and then competitive things that the board likes to look at. So you might have the degree and you might have that minimum GPA, but knowing when I know, say with intelligence, don't even bother to come to me if you don't speak Cantonese or you don't have XYZ experience, because it's competitive. So I take a look at the resume. You compare it against the program authorization, and talk about what the candidate really wants. Is it the specific job or is it the specific branch of service? And we help talk it out and see what's best for that individual.
Thank you, ma'am.
Anybody else before we depart for the day? Going once, going twice? I guess not. Natalie, close us out for the end of the day. Any final thoughts you wish to share with us? And I will say that you have been a wealth of information, especially for someone like me. So, from the bottom of my heart, thank you. It's been very inspiring hearing you today. So, go ahead and close us out. What are your final thoughts?
Final thoughts. I got to keep it short because I'll tend to, I have a lot of thoughts, but don't give up. You're going to encounter some difficult situations and challenges with the job search. And perhaps once you get a job, it might not be what you thought it was. Stay positive, always work hard. Don't ever quit. Don't ever quit your job without finding a backup, right? Have another job lined up. Please do not ever quit your job. If you're financially not ready to do so, if you don't have your savings. Also, if you want to start your own business, do your research first. Marry it into your life, into your current job, so you can eventually, break ties and go out on your own. Always be positive. We're vets and we're looked at in a certain way. Always keep your head up high. We get to be that small percent of individuals that have served. And because of that, we have a lot of advantages, and we're also at some disadvantages. Don't ever pity it. Don't ever pity yourself. We hold ourselves to higher standards. We do what's right. No matter what job you go into, work hard. Nothing is ever beneath you or above you. You're capable of anything that you put your mind to. So before I keep rambling on, I want to leave you with that. Hold yourself to the highest of standards. You're capable of wonderful things. You're capable of anything that you believe that you can do. It sounds cliche, but it's actually true. I'm living proof. I just never gave up. I might not be the highest IQ or maybe the smartest in the room. Maybe some people say I disagree. But I've worked with some pretty intelligent individuals across epidemiology, the law, healthcare. I've always come out on top because I worked harder. I wanted it more. And when you want something more and you apply yourself, there's no limit. I promise you. IQ means nothing. It doesn't matter if they came from a background where, they were Harvard or whatever it was. It really means nothing in the end. What matters is what's inside you. So I'll leave you with that.
Love it. Fantastic. And as someone like myself who's as sharp as a donut, I do want to thank you very much for your time today. I do greatly appreciate it, Natalie. I wish I met you 10 years ago because you have been inspiring for myself and the others here. So, Natalie, thank you very much for your time. We do greatly appreciate it. And with that being said, we are done for the day. But again, Natalie, it's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you for your time.
If anyone has any follow-up questions, maybe they're too embarrassed to ask, feel free to reach out, natalie.schibell@mission2commission.org, or you can ping me on LinkedIn. All right, guys, all the best of luck.